Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed, high atop the Edwards Plateau. And so, we've had an eventful couple of weeks.
Yep.
And this week, we decided to take a break with Ben. He wanted this week off. So we're just doing a normal Snake Bros episode this week, but I think we are going to be resuming those episodes with him next week. At least one more, maybe more than that. Don't know. We're just kind of
playing it by ear,
taking it one episode at a time. So yeah, other stuff that happened. Our server went down.
Yes.
And was down pretty much almost 24 hours before I was able to get it fixed. So we had to migrate everything to a new server and then make sure that was all working, and then transfer the domain. So we did that, and now it looks like we're gonna have to do it again because basically have to do it again. What happened that day didn't turn out to be the right thing to do, so probably gonna have to do it one more time.
But hopefully it won't be down for long.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be
down for long. Yeah. Next time it'll just be however long it takes the domain to retarget.
Switch over, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that happened was Laura had the baby.
That's right.
Which was on Thursday, I guess. We left in the middle of the night on Wednesday. I don't know. It's all running together. I guess, yeah, would have been Wednesday, which we were going to do the show, and then we were like, well, let's push it back to Thursday. And then I was in the hospital we were all in the hospital for more than 24 hours. Everything went great.
Yep.
Everything's awesome. And you've got a niece.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Lila May
I'm
is
afraid
in the world.
to touch her.
Super chill.
Yeah. She's very,
real cool,
very,
calm.
very relaxed, unlike the previous one.
Yeah. So that's been great. And, but yeah, it's the weekend, kind of taking it easy, catching up on some sleep, working out, getting the baby,
getting the schedules
nestled in to the home
worked out, yeah.
situation. So I got a lot of sleep this afternoon, and I was like, hey, bro, let's podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to podcast on Wednesday this week.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
And then on the way home, Kyle was like, hey, Laura says, can you guys do it tomorrow? And we were both like, all right. But we were also both thinking it might not happen.
That's right. That was my first thought.
And it didn't. Which is fine. And I wasn't even sure. I was like, well, it's not a big deal. We can skip a week. Or I could do a little snake bites or something. But Kyle was at the hospital, and he's like, nope, we're coming home tomorrow night, and we should do one. So,
yeah.
So here we are.
I was itching to talk about the Shamir.
Yeah, we got the Shamir. But yeah, the other thing I was thinking of was when our server went down, I was thinking, the podcasts are down. We got a podcaster down. That was like, I wake up and my phone is exploding with all these messages. Can't download the show. And Kyle's like, shit, I think your server's down. Yep, podcasts are down.
Yep.
So yeah, we have a whole bunch of different stuff tonight. Kyle and I have been thinking about the Shamir in relation to, the stuff we've been doing with Ben. And I think it was after the show last week, right? Yeah. So after we were done with Ben and Chuck last week, after we were finished recording the show and we basically stopped the recording, we were all kind of hanging out afterwards talking about it. And Kyle and I were just like, guys, Shamir, and they're like, huh? We're like, you guys haven't heard the legend of the Shamir? So we kind of went into it, and then Kyle afterwards was like, dude, we should do a show on whatever we can find on this. So
yeah, it's probably not enough for a whole show. But we've got listener communications, we've got some other stories, and we were just we'll do the listener stuff, and then we'll jump into whatever. Who knows how long it could go?
Yeah,
might be one segment.
Yeah,
but there's just interesting stuff.
Yeah,
it's strange.
Yeah. And then if we have extra time, you and I have been talking a lot about Elastic Universe.
That's
so
right.
Maybe we could go through some of that too.
Yeah.
If there's time after doing the Shamir stuff.
See,
yeah.
We do the planning for the show during the show.
Yeah, we're figuring this out right now. All right, but let's go ahead and do the Space Weather News. From spaceweather.com, where we get all our space weather news. Geomagnetic Storm Watch. NOAA forecasters say that minor G1 class geomagnetic storms are possible on February 1st and 2nd when a solar wind stream hits Earth's magnetic field. The gaseous material is flowing from a southern hole in the sun's atmosphere. Solar wind speeds could jump to 600 plus kilometers per second when the stream arrives, sparking bright Arctic auroras. Also, Sirius is pulsing with color. There is something strange about Sirius. The brightest star in the sky is pulsing with color. So to the naked eye, Sirius looks pale blue, almost white. But if you photograph it with a camera using very short exposure times, Sirius will reveal its true colors, lots of them. So basically the story here is that a photographer in Denmark did this experiment. The first picture he took was a half a second shutter speed. And then he took 15 other pictures with 1/500th of a second shutter speed. Right? And so he ends up with this. There's the half a second one, and these are all the 500 ones. Every one of them is a different color.
Wow.
Blues and greens and yellows and oranges and purples, and it's really cool. And so astronomers, they say, call this phenomena scintillation. It is caused by thermal irregularities in Earth's atmosphere. Packets of relatively warm and cool air act like prisms, spreading starlight into rainbow colors. And when these packets drift in front of Sirius, voila, you have colors. So the reason the first exposure looks white is because a half a second is long enough to average many fluctuating colors together.
Yeah.
Multiple packets of air drift by during that time. The shorter snapshots, however, capture individual packets, and they look like tiny prismatic supernova explosions. Really cool.
That is cool.
All stars scintillate, but Sirius does so most flamboyantly because of its extreme brightness. See this for yourself. Step outside this evening, an hour or so after sunset, and look east for Sirius near the feet of Orion. The lower it is, the more it scintillates, and you may be able to see the colors, no camera required.
So when planets are like brighter than the brightest stars, but is it because they're already reflecting the light?
Yeah, I think
So the light is taking on more of the colors of the reflection,
Yeah.
rather than the direct light being generated.
Yeah, because the light the planets are reflecting is already...
The planets have already absorbed a bunch of colors.
Yeah,
and they're already
Sirius is sending out pure...
Yeah,
you
okay.
know,
Yeah.
Not pure, I mean, it's across the spectrum,
Right.
the known spectrum.
Yeah, that's how you can divide it up into all the different
Yeah.
colors. That's always I've always been intrigued by that because, you know, the white...
Intrigued by what?
The ability, like the white light is like a complex wave
Yeah.
containing all these other... okay, so when you take a prism and you
It's
scatter
like
the
noise.
light, you divide the complex waveform up into its component simple waves,
Yeah.
right? Mm-hmm. And each one of those simplified waves is a specific frequency range, which is what gives you the color.
Right.
So
White light is like noise in terms of sound.
yeah, it's like all these it's noise.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then the prism will separate it out into separate notes. Or
right.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the prism is it's a different medium, right? And it's at an angle to the direction of the oncoming light.
Yeah.
Because the wave front of the light is curved, like if you imagine rings going out into water, they're curved.
Yeah.
When they enter the angled face, the part of the curve that enters the face of the new medium first starts to speed up.
Yeah. And it separates it out.
And so it sends it a different direction, right? And so
Yeah.
if you have a series of prisms with all these different angles, it speeds up the light at different rates.
Yeah.
Or turns it at different angles, basically. Which is just, I don't know.
Yeah. It's weird.
The fact that results in separating it out based on frequency is interesting to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
kind of weird. I need to look back into it some more, but yeah, that's why they say it bends the light. The prism bends the light.
Yeah, and doesn't it have to do with those different frequencies being different frequencies that makes them show up when it hits the prism? Isn't that part of it? Like the reason it separates it is because they're all contained in there, and they
Right,
get,
they're all
they
in
get
there.
bent at a little bit slightly different. That's why the prism will give you a rainbow across the wall with a point source of light, because all that light goes in and then gets split up and makes a band
Based on frequency.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Which is weird because it's all traveling at the same speed.
yeah, yeah. I don't know.
They don't
But
know.
each one has a different wavelength that
Right.
I don't know.
It has a different
Don't
wa-
ask me. I'm
has
not
a
an
different
optical
wavelength.
physicist.
I know. I'm just saying it's fascinating.
Yeah. Okay. Current conditions. Solar wind speed is it seems low, 305.1 kilometers per second, and the density is a relatively high, 10.4 protons per cubic centimeter. So yeah, didn't we decide that this makes sense? Like that if you have wind speed really high, the density is going to be lower because they're. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter because the source is what's making the density. But a lower speed seems like you'd have more stuff around, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know. Still haven't figured all this stuff out. Sunspot number right now is 0. We're in a 2-day long spotless stretch.
Yeah, we still need to reach out to this guy and get him to come on the show and tell us what all this means.
Yeah. Neutron counts today is 8.8% plus above the space age average. And the KP index is quiet at 0. And the 24-hour max for the KP is 1, which is still quiet.
Still waiting for the prediction to come true of the most active solar period. Or
Well, it takes it a while to ramp up.
yeah.
So, okay, that's the space weather news.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. And I have the emails and I have this story.
Quick Venus update.
Oh, yeah.
They're studying a giant crater on Venus. I think it's. I wish I had this. I had the story bookmarked, but I went through and cleaned stuff out, and I accidentally deleted it. But it's a really large crater. It's many miles across. I don't remember the number. The biggest one, I guess, that they know of. And based on the studies of that crater and the rings that are forming out, where they're able to make judgments on the thickness of the lithosphere because of how it liquefied or whatever when it was hit.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly thick. Really thick. Which suggests that it, like the volcanism idea is not, or tectonic plates and all that kind of stuff. It's like one giant plate.
Yeah, it's one plate.
And so now they're saying, well, it must have, I guess the idea is that it had to have been there for a really long time to get
To cool that much?
and get a lithosphere that thick. So I don't know. How does it have a young surface? Yeah, exactly. I know, but it's weird, right? Because it has this young surface that they were thinking, oh, it must be all this volcanism and earthquakes and stuff. And now they're like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
It's
it
got a
doesn't have any
hugely
plates.
thick crust.
A thick crust. Huh.
So still confusing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Emails?
Yeah.
Okay. First one's from Roddy the Mammal. He says, a question, a business idea, and an observation.
Okay.
Dear Ophidian siblings, as I sit here by the fire, quill in opposable thumbed paw, listening to my favorite limbless reptilian podcast, I ponder your words of wisdom, punctuated with random but welcomed gleeful gigglings and sibling snickerings. And I am once again inspired to expand my level of intelligence by asking a question. If it is claimed that objects gain mass with speed, and since I live a fairly sedentary existence, why do I weigh so much? Regarding the latest episode on stellar nucleosynthesis and radiometric dating, fascinating and informative. In fact, your presentation was almost understandable. Kind of makes me wish I hadn't slept through my high school science classes. On the plus side, listening to all the scientific knowledge made me aware of a fantastic business opportunity. With scientists doing all those lonely lab hours and repeatable experiments, and forlorn field forays and endless hours of digging, there is little time for socializing, friendship, and yes, love. So, to get these isolated geeks and nerds out into the world, to get them meeting and greeting each other, and to get them to falling in love and breeding the next generation of eggheads, I propose we create a social media meeting website just for scientific scholars, radiocarbondating.com. We could get Harrison Ford and Karen Allen as spokesmodels. What do you think? Sounds good? Think it over and have your people call my people. In conclusion, I'd like to say that this is the smartest podcast I listen to next to Cosmographia, which might not be saying much, as most of the podcasts I listen to are about comic books and Bigfoot. But not My Little Pony. That one was totally accidental. And now you'll have to excuse me as my feline companion is sitting across from me, her amber glare reminding me that her ancestors once hunted my ancestors, and kibble is required to forestall any repeat of such past evolutionary enactments. Endothermically yours, Roddy the Mammal.
Radiocarbondating.com. Genius. Oh.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you didn't understand the nucleosynthesis episode. I didn't understand most of it either.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, so. Okay, next one is also from Roddy. He says this is an addendum. Addendum, Secret Life of Trees, from Roddy the Mammal.
Uh-huh.
Dear Ophidian siblings, specifically Kyle, your talk on the secret life of trees with their neural networking and communication made me wonder if, like jellyfish, forests are but a single colony organism that, due to its size relative to humans, is mistaken for a collection of separate individuals. There does appear to be evidence that plants have a form of sentience that is far more advanced and more alien than suspected by animal-based and biased paradigms would suggest. Food for thought. Well, more like a snack for thought. Thank you in advance, Roddy the Mammal.
Yeah, that's really cool. I wonder about that myself.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like a man of war. It's actually a colony. You know, it looks like a jellyfish. I mean, you think it's a jellyfish, but it's like a colony, right?
Yes.
It's a whole bunch
Like
of different
bees.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're all different.
Right.
You know, bees, like there are like a few different types, but this is a colony of many different types of things.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this whole structure, and if you look really closely at them, you see that they've got this dome, and there's like this weird forest in there, and then it's got all the roots hanging down that get all the food, and it kind of floats around in the ocean, right? So it's like, are actual forests like those? They don't move. I mean, I guess they do over long periods of time if the ground is shifting, but
Yeah.
you know.
Well, yeah. I mean, jellyfish don't really move. They just happen to live in a medium that's.
Yeah, well, some of them do, like actual jellyfish.
Yeah,
can
that's true. That's true.
Can propel themselves, but these things like have a dome with a sail, and they float. You know.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're studying we're sort of compartmentalizing it. You know, we're like, oh, this is fungus.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
It's a specific.
It's like
the
no,
one
it
thing
may be actually a single
Yeah, it's just yeah. That's the neural
symbiotic
network.
organism. Yeah. Yeah.
It's you think the same thing. Like you what was that that movie Inner Space or whatever? Shrink down and get in a little machine and go
Yeah.
inside the human body, and there's
Yeah.
just all these different crazy things happening.
Yeah.
Things fighting each other and killing each other, and
Yep. Inner Space and Osmosis Jones were both like that.
Osmosis Jones. That's right.
Osmosis Jones was great. He fights that super virus with the cold pill.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's just like all these different life forms all having their own little jobs and doing their own little things, and it's
Yeah.
actually really all together making one thing. I mean, you could ask the same question about all of life,
Yeah.
and we're just one small piece of that as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, are we all basically just very complicated symbiotic structures?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I mean, I guess. Right? Yes, the answer is basically like all complex life forms have symbiosis with many different things. You know, you have gut flora and stuff like skin bacteria that live on you that help you out. So, but I don't know. The idea that a whole forest is actually just one thing is really cool.
Yeah, it is.
The trees are like the hairs. It's the hair.
Yeah. The grass is the fuzzies.
That's right. Okay. Let's see. This one's from Karen. Yeah. It's called This is the Dawning of the Age of Aquarius. Hi, Kyle and Russ. My path, Graham Hancock to Randall Carlson to Snakes. I enjoy Cosmographia and signed up for Contact at the Cabin 2020 and am hopeful we can make it to the Scablands in May without further delay.
Awesome.
I decided to give you a listen starting with the Dr. Chandra interview in episode 141 that you mentioned on Cosmographia, and then I went all the way back to episode 2, and I am now at episode 172.
Wow.
In your recent episode 168, there was discussion about the golden calf worship and how Moses came down and shut all that down as they were in a new processional age. This allegorical way of thinking about this biblical tale is not a new concept for me or your show, but for whatever reason, this recent comment on the story triggered my thinking. There are myths and tales and legends that discuss twins, bulls, rams, and fish that would represent the transitions from the age of Gemini to Taurus to Aries to Pisces, respectively. As we are now the age of Aquarius, it begs the question, where are the myths, legends, and tales that are forming around the water bearer? It does seem to me that if the birth of Christianity generally is to be representative of the birth of the age of Pisces, we can certainly see a reduction in its influence in cultures worldwide. This would seem to have a parallel with the rejection of bull worship that Moses encouraged. In other words, I can say that I see in global culture generally a movement away from Pisces which would be consistent with the processional age transitions. But what is the movement towards the new age? If there is a brotherhood that injects information at specific times, can we assume they would be injecting new myths, stories, cultural or political movements, and the like to preserve the transition of Pisces to Aquarius for future generations? I would imagine it wouldn't be some garden variety stories, since I agree with the comments you have made on the show that it's kind of a technology to create stories and myths that are preserved across the ages. I would expect there to be something that is global and possibly religious in nature. Are there good candidates for icons, religious or political figures? Movements or cult leaders, etc., that could represent Aquarius? For myself, I have no candidates. It does seem to me that we should expect to see, if the old stories are indeed processional in nature, the unfolding of a mythology around a new processional age in our time, where it is happening. Would we recognize it as it is emerging? Or do these things get borne out by the purveyors of the technology decades later? The Gospels, for example, were told some 70 years after the fact and not in real time. In other news, I did purchase 4 books from Intertraditions recently. None were the Velikovsky heresies, but I did get 2 other Laird Scranton books as well as the 2 Chris Dunn books you reviewed as a result of your book reviews on Dunn's work and the Laird Scranton interview. Love the show. Thanks for the interesting content. From Kay.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I think your last idea is where is kind of, that's the way I look at it. Like the story of Moses coming down and getting mad about the worship of the golden calf is probably a sort of a condensation of a long time period where culture changed. You know what I'm saying? So
yes.
1,000 years from now, historians or the purveyors of the technology, the knowledge, would condense our story and into a simple I don't know what the word is, but that's basically a simple scenario, kind of like that one.
Yeah. Everyone was eating fish, but then the water came and washed them all away.
Yeah.
Very simple story. But yeah, and if you talk to Matheson, he's going to tell you that the entire Moses story and all the rest of the Bible is all star myth.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with real people on the ground doing real things.
Right. which is his opinion. I think that's a part of it. I don't think that's the whole.
Yeah, so it may be those things combined.
Right.
Is what I mean. Like, that's what Matheson will say. Like, this is all star myth. But what you're saying is that much later, and what she was asking is much later, these people come along and they take the story and then they incorporate it into existing, already very ancient star mythology.
Yes.
And basically take that, so here's the story, and maybe there's some real people involved and real events or whatever, and we're just going to sort of kind of merge them into these star myths that have been around for freaking 40,000 years.
Yeah. That's cool. And I will say that it's interesting to me as well that, Aquarius is the water bearer or the bringer of knowledge. Mm-hmm. And, we have this burgeoning technology of the instantaneous transfer of information.
Yeah.
All over the globe. We can, I don't know.
We all carry the jar of Aquarius in our pockets.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's all you do. You take it out and it begins to gush forth information. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Gush forth.
Yeah.
Got that mixed up.
Yep.
Okay. This one is from Joseph. It's about episode 182, the contents of the boxes in the Serapeum. He says, "Hello, Snake Bros. I was listening to episode 182, which is your swapcast with Uncharted X. Really enjoyed the podcast, and the Serapeum is a fascinating topic. Some time ago, I was discussing this topic with my brother, and we wondered if the boxes were built to protect their contents from some sort of calamity or cataclysm. And we debated about what contents would be stored in such a container to survive those sorts of circumstances. The subject of my work and study is information security, so I assumed that the boxes would be utilized to store the accumulated knowledge and information that was crucial to the builders. My brother works in healthcare, so he said that the contents would be invaluable medical supplies and seed stores to ensure the health and wellness of the survivors of the calamity or cataclysm. Upon reflection on this conversation with my brother, I recognized similarity between the boxes in the Serapeum and a concept from the movie Inception. In this movie, some of the dreams portrayed in the movie involve a safe that the dreamer fills with ideas or objects that they want to protect. Similarly, in our imagination, my brother and I populated these boxes with what we imagine would be the most important things for a civilization to protect. So thinking about the boxes in the Serapeum in the context of the first paragraph of this email is a good mental exercise to examine what is important to oneself."
That's cool.
Also, at the end of this email, I include a low-effort meme that I made. It seems relevant to your discussion with Ben. Sahiawas.
I love these low-effort memes.
Yeah, all the best, Joseph. And the meme is let's see, what is he saying? When you ask, where are the human remains if the pyramids are tombs? And it's just Zahi going, meh.
Low-effort memes.
Low-effort memes are great.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'm trying to.
I have been really reading, I try not too much to read YouTube comments, but with these, I've been going to Ben's page and just reading because, all of his followers are YouTube followers. And so he's got hundreds and hundreds of comments on there. And of course, we have comments on ours. And now Chuck posted the one we did last week on his too. So he's got comments. So I'm basically reading them all. But Ben's got, and there's just tons of people in there asking the same question. What are these for? What do they do with them? And a lot of people think they were seed vaults or they stored books or they stored knowledge or they stored information, or people think that they were tombs for giants. And, the more I think about it, the less I think that these were storage vaults. I don't think it was that simple. It's that, to me, it all comes down to the precision of the interior being more precise than the exterior, and me thinking that what was being stored in there, it doesn't seem like storage, I guess, unless they were storing something that required a precise interior. And that's maybe, but I just can't imagine what that would be. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But it doesn't seem like you just fill it with seeds. Seeds don't need, precisely cut, polished interiors. you know? So the other argument you can make, I guess, is, well, the tools that they were using, that's how they made it. But the outsides of the box don't look like that. So I just don't think that that's the case.
Yes. Agreed.
They took extra care to do something to the interiors of those boxes that they did not do to the exterior, which to me implies it wasn't somewhere where you're just dumping seeds or scrolls or even stacking books.
So in the lab at the winery, we have volumetric flasks.
Yeah.
And they're all different sizes, but they have a long neck that's very narrow. And on that neck somewhere is a line that's been etched into the glass that tells you a very exact interior volume if you fill it up to that line, right? So you wouldn't really call these storage flasks, but you do put stuff in them, right? But they have to be very precise on the interior. In other words, where that line is made.
That line shows you the exact
precise.
That size is marked on that flask.
Right. Now, if there was a purpose, if you had to have a very specific amount of something, but you couldn't have any headspace, that would require an incredibly precise interior.
Yeah. Okay.
And that kind of suggests that they're not storage devices, but that something is
they're
inside.
Science boxes.
Science box. But that something is to be put in them, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so, they are containers.
One example would be, this is a terrible example, but when they're making the atomic bomb, right? They have the very precise amounts of the enriched material, and they are, quote unquote, stored in a vessel. The interior of that vessel being extremely precise.
Yeah. That's right.
But it's not a storage vessel. That's not what it really would be called, even though that, yes, there is a material being stored in there.
Another suggestion people have made was like that they were that they remind them of the very high quality sort of interior precision boxes we make now to store radioactive waste.
Yeah. I think I made that point.
If they stored something highly radioactive in them, there would be signs of it.
Right. Yeah. I'm not.
Right.
Not
I'm not. Yeah. I'm not. I'm just pointing out that you wouldn't have to. In other words, radioactivity, if stored in some vessel over a period of time, will damage visibly, erode.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So they wouldn't be highly polished anymore unless their polish is something that we still don't understand. I mean, in terms of making the material into something we don't understand.
But it's analogous to our storage of radioactive waste. And I pointed this out when George Howard was on, right?
Yeah.
Because he was talking about how the tunnel itself is really rough compared to the boxes.
Yes.
And that was my point there. It's like, well, if you went down to where we're storing radioactive waste, you would see this sort of roughly made concrete underground
just bored
structure
down in there with a big boring machine.
And then and shot concrete all over the walls and stuff. And then you get down into where the storage devices are, and they're very precisely made.
Vessels. Yeah, I agree.
But going back to the Serapeum, my point was that, like, if it was a machine type of thing, like something that actually did something, right? We're talking about resonance, or if it was in any way, Dunn-esque.
Yeah.
The interior could be very precisely made to contain, if the watcher was here, he would say mercury.
Yeah.
For
spinning.
Some purpose of making cool stuff.
I also saw people suggesting that the reason the alcoves are staggered was because of some kind of resonance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that, Ben was pointing out that, like, each one of these boxes had very precisely made, highly polished granite, quote unquote, false door things on either side of them. They look, Egyptologists call them false doors, but basically it's just these in particular would be like a
square or a rectangular slab.
A big, thick slab of granite. I mean, the one we saw that he showed us that was broken was thick.
Yeah, very thick.
So this big, thick slab of granite, and on one face, it's got a series of rectangles cut into it. Each one is inside the next one and deeper cut. And there's 3 or 4 of them, so it kind of gives you this sort of wormhole, effect. If it's like looking down a hallway, it's even though it's a relatively flat surface.
It's a diffuser.
Each one insets down just a tiny bit.
Yeah.
But it leaves these lines where you can, it gives you this 3D effect, which is why they call them false doors. But you got one of those on either side, and it's like this reflective dish.
Yeah. Auditoriums are built the same way, right?
Yeah.
They keep stepping down and down and down to the stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they're not that pronounced, they don't go that deep, but still it's
a similar.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were set in there, so they're made in the same material, the boxes.
Like a focusing device.
Yeah,
or something.
and it's like these 2 focusing dishes that are set on either side of the thing in these alcoves, and the alcoves themselves are much more well cut than the tunnels.
Yes.
So I was thinking about how you were saying, well, the fact that they were scooping cracks out of these boxes on the outside suggests that they expected them to continue to vibrate, and those cracks would therefore continue to expand, like the whole symbol thing, like you drill the symbol.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, I started to imagine, the box is there and it's freaking humming with whatever's inside of it. And then you've got these reflector plates on either side that are, blocking the other alcoves from receiving that.
Oh, yeah. That's
I don't know. It's like those are shields.
Yeah. They maybe are reflecting a specific wavelength.
Yeah, because you don't want the wavelengths to start crossing over each other and hitting the other boxes and causing some kind of catastrophic freaking,
something
explosion thingy, massive meltdown. I don't know.
I don't know either.
But yeah, they could have been reflective plates to contain this vibration, or maybe to reflect it back into the box to make it keep going. Something, or both.
Resonator.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
Very interesting. Don't know.
But I do like the fact that I like the idea that if you go with the idea that they were storage containers, then you can use that as a test to see what's the most important thing to that person. Like, what do you think they would have stored in them? And they'll name off whatever they think is the most important. And then,
comic books.
Yeah, comic books, man. Video games. All right, let's take a break.
Yep.
We're way over here.
Snakes! Back, ladies and gentlemen, the Super Snake Bros Extravaganza, episode 184, between Swapcasts, listener communications and commentary, and possibly some Shamir. How many more emails you got?
Some.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, so this is from Peter. Now, let me get my mic up here. From Peter, and he says, this is called Idea About the Scoop Marks. Snacks! I am watching number 182, the Swapcast with Uncharted X. I can't help but see the scoops as nothing less than tuning the boxes. The insides have to remain precise for whatever is inside them. Many Arks of the Covenant, one in each box, which have been taken away in antiquity.
Ah, good idea.
Once closed, they needed to be tuned to resonate at some particular frequency. The reason you will see some with scoops and some without is because the exterior of the boxes are all a bit different, requiring some to be tuned while others were already resonating properly. I see this whole complex as a power plant. What do you think? Keep up the curiosity. From Peter.
Yeah, I like the power plant idea and the tuning idea. When we go there, I'm going to bring I don't know if I'll have an actual hardware tuner, tone generator, or just my phone and my voice.
Yeah.
But the idea was to go in every box, stick my head down in there, and hum until I find the fundamental.
Yeah.
Record it, or hold my phone in there with the tuner on to see what the frequency is.
Now, will that change depending, because all the lids are a little bit different?
Yeah, it might. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Because the box would do it with a lid or without.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Because it's just like, it may be a different note. It's most likely would be a different note depending on the opening. Just like you would think of like a flute.
Flute, yeah.
So when you have all the valves of the flute shut, that would be like the deepest box because the end of the flute is still open.
Yeah.
But when you let a finger off of a valve somewhere within, that changes the length of the column.
Of the column, yeah.
And so your wavelength changes. So yeah, I think also if you like with this ocarina, I have an ocarina. So it is
the ocarina of time.
It is the ocarina of time, and it has a very precise interior, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And there's 6 holes, 7. There's the hole you blow in, and then there's the whistle hole.
Yep.
And then there's 5 valves for you to put your fingers on. So when you have them all closed, and then as you open them up, it goes higher.
Yeah.
But if you start to close your finger over a hole, and it's like, so I'm going to slide my finger over one of the holes real slow.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So that will happen. But see, that's a different situation because it's actually air passing
Through the whistle.
and on the whistle, the air is going above the whistle
And below it.
The whistle's like a sharp edge.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes above it until it gets pressurized.
Yeah.
And the pressure pushes the air below it.
Yeah.
And then that causes a vacuum to form above, which then draws the air back to the top. So you get this fluctuation.
Yeah,
where
it's
the air's
flapping
going,
like a reed would on a reed instrument. Yeah.
It's going above and below and above and below. And that's what's giving you your resonance, right?
Whereas if you were just humming into that interior space,
it's going to be different.
It's different.
And I don't know. I'd have to look. I should do more research to find out.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that and help.
And
maybe get some Snake Force people to help me figure out how that will affect it.
Yeah. And I also think that because he's talking about, they're cutting these scoops out to tune the boxes. Well, it's like the interior
has no
sound
cuts.
Is not going to be affected by cutting scoops out of the exterior of the box.
The interior volume, but the resonance of the resonance of the
box material
itself
will change. Yeah. So that would be two different
things.
Yeah.
So
and that's the other thing. I started to think about this, we were talking about these boxes vibrating, and I'm thinking about those lids. And unless they all have lips, you don't want them vibrating too much because the lid will eventually work its way. It'll walk off the box.
Unless they, okay, you just said that. Yeah, they have the lips.
Yeah. And we know that giant one stuck in the corner has a lip because we were able to see it with his.
Yeah.
But do all the other lids have lips, or do they just sit flat?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because if they sit flat, then they weren't vibrating it.
Unless they were rung together.
Okay. They could have been rung.
Which is why pry bars are not going to work. You have to slide it off.
Yeah.
You can't pry it up. It's like the Johnson blocks, right? You can't just pull them apart. You have to slide them away from each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Many questions.
Yes. But the point is, what I'm interested in, one of the things I'm interested in is determining the dimensions of the interior of the boxes. So if I'm not allowed to get inside every box with a tape measure.
And you can't even do that with all of them because the opening is too small.
Yeah, the next best thing is to hum into the box.
And then you can...
And you'll get basically a pretty decent idea of the resonant frequency of it based on the volume, the amplitude returning back, the feedback loop.
Yeah.
Created from the standing waves inside the box. And so... Yes. How big the gap is in the lid, is that going to change the pitch? I don't know. But if it doesn't, then this would be a great
way to test the insides of the boxes.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
wouldn't that be very interesting if all the different boxes had
the same interiors? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which would make...
Or maybe there would be a set.
Yeah.
Of sizes,
or they would have very specific tunings that would give us some kind of,
no matter what,
It's going to be
The information will be
Yeah.
interesting, right? Because it's going to be a clue.
Yeah. And the other question is has anybody ever gone in there, like archaeologists or whatever, and used lasers or something to get because you can't get in there, but
They only analyzed the contents of the
which
boxes.
they had none. So
That's right.
what kind of air came out of this box?
Which they probably did not test.
Right.
On the only one that wasn't open.
Right.
But that could have been a clue as well.
Yeah.
You know, if it was some inert gas,
Right.
that would have been really interesting. We'll never know.
Yeah. And we know it wasn't a volatile one because he used dynamite. So it must have been inert or just regular atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This one is from, I think it's,
Unless he used not enough dynamite,
yeah.
but it blew open the box anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, man, that was a particularly powerful stick of dynamite.
Yeah. Wow. Wasn't expecting that dynamite to be quite that strong. Yeah. Or I just have to wonder. I guess they probably all left. I mean, surely they weren't standing there when they set it off, right?
Yeah.
But if it had been sitting there closed for 10,000 years, the air in there would have been bad. You know, it could have killed you.
Yeah.
Like opening up a mine or whatever that's been sealed off. You know, you got to be really careful. So
For some reason, that reminded me of Spy versus Spy. Bring back Spy versus Spy.
Yeah.
I will kick your ass. Remember that game?
did you used to win at that all the time?
I don't think so. But you remember that game?
I remember playing that. Yeah.
That was a great game.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways.
Yeah. We had the Arctic version.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the only one we had. And the whole point was to get to the rocket before the other guy to leave or
That's
something.
right,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just say this is from G. He says that's called "In the Dark Northern Winter of 1930, an entire village filled with men, women, and children vanished." That's the title. He says, "Thank you for the great work, guys. Love the show. I recently read this about an Inuit community, nomadic as they were, seeming to leave all their belongings behind and head off. No species on Earth would survive with that mentality. They were the smartest of the North to live in such conditions with relative ease. If it wasn't for them, I may not be typing this, LOL. I have spent much time in the North with the Innu and the Inuit and never once heard this story. My curiosity is, has there been other reports of missing people en masse? I will call it with similar evidence. If you have covered it on a previous podcast, I'm sorry I haven't reached it yet, but your book reports I listened to more than once and they are good stuff. Interviews are A1, stick with it. One of my farewells is, may your footprints be long upon the earth. And being a snake, you see the dilemma. How about this? May the skeptics choke on your shedded skin of knowledge. Needs some work. Anyway, I don't know. Have at it, listeners. Snake Brother Rock. And yeah, so what he's talking about is, and I have read this story, and you'll find it's one of those stories where you can go and read the story and you can find people who are trying to say, did this really happen? And then there's tons of skeptic places that are like, this is bullshit. It didn't happen. But yeah, he gives a basic synopsis of it here. Canadian winter of 1930, battling falling snow and the biting cold, a weary fur trapper, Joe LaBelle, went in search of a safe haven. When he came to the Inuit village of Lake Anjikuni, all was eerily silent. Where in previous visits he had enjoyed the warmth and company of a busy and bustling community, now there was only an empty village, and upon investigation he found fires still burning, food stocks intact, and the villagers' belongings in place.
Yeah, I remember,
that story. Yeah.
Yep.
And there were other things that he found. Their rifles, all of their sled dogs were there. Most of them were dead. And then another part of the story that this is part of what makes people think it's crap is that the nearby area where they buried their dead, the graves had been exhumed or something. Yeah. So it's like people are like, whatever, this is some kind of crazy apocalyptic legend. But yeah, I don't know if it's true or not. Supposedly he fled in fear, eventually got the some Canadian authorities to go investigate, and yeah, they found an empty village where previously there had been people. So, but yeah, I can't tell you any more than that. Did it really happen? I have no idea. But it is a weird story. But it's interesting. He says he's lived among them. Yeah, so you should ask them. Like,
Well, I thought that's what he said. Nobody.
yeah, he says he's never heard it. He says, I have spent much time in the north with the Innu and the Inuit and never once heard this story. So that may be, I don't know, man. I don't know if that's evidence that it didn't happen or that may be something they don't talk about. But yeah, it's a weird story. But, you know, you read any, like, there's plenty of places where you can go and find people proving, quote unquote, that this isn't real.
Yeah.
That there's no actual reports, and you know there was no village there, and this guy that supposedly reported it didn't actually exist, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I'm not to say. Okay.
Such is the nature of these tales.
Yeah. Okay, this is from Birch. He says, "Hey brothers, did y'all get the box I sent you? I was worried that the beers exploded en route."
Nope. They exploded in the cube when we opened it.
right.
No, they didn't explode. It was good.
Yeah.
He probably heard it by now, huh?
Yeah, maybe. Well, he says he's enjoying the Uncharted series, so he must be skipping stuff.
Yeah. Skipper. Yeah, man. We drank those beers on the show.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. It was awesome. All of it.
Yeah, the pipe tool, all that stuff. And the smokes.
And Lars earrings.
Yeah.
It was just,
He says,
and the medallions, like, dang, that was a really awesome, buddy.
He says, I am enjoying the Uncharted series. Stasis boxes? Any check on the resonant frequency of the insides of these boxes?
Working on it.
What wavelength is sustained by the boxes? Are they different for each box? It's crazy. It does seem to be a way to preserve something or someone until danger passes. Best, Birch.
Yep. Very interesting stuff. An enigma.
Yeah. Okay.
And one where future data is possible.
That's right.
Which is one of the reasons why I latch onto it gives me hope.
More research can be done.
That's right.
Yeah. And it's easy to see it. It's not like, it's also not like a, you know, where you're like, well, what else can we do to figure this out?
Yeah.
It's like so little attention has been paid to this place that you can come up with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have the bribes to be able to get it done? No, that's
Yeah. You just need Yusuf.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. This one is... okay. This is from Nelson, who's also in the Discord. He says, question for you both and Ben. Hi, Russ, Kyle, and Ben. I am fully convinced that the megalithic structures in Egypt were created using more advanced technology than what the standard model says was available. But to put on my SCRP glasses, alternative histories often discount the possibility that the pyramids, for example, were built at the time that standard history says, but using technology that was kept secret from the masses. Now, I've heard so many times that there is absolutely no evidence that the Great Pyramids of Giza were built by Cheops or Khephren, except for a bit of graffiti. But according to the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, the Egyptian priests told him that they were built by Cheops and Khephren. Not only that, but these pharaohs were wicked, inhumanely using the Egyptian population like slaves in order to complete each pyramid. And these pharaohs were reportedly so hated that many Egyptians claimed others had built those pyramids. So to me, this account of Herodotus has extra validity because even though Khephren and Cheops are said to be evil, they are nevertheless given credit for the buildings of these pyramids, which as construction feats are nevertheless amazing. That's my current view anyway, even though I haven't looked into it too deeply. What are your thoughts on this? Thanks, Nelson.
What do you say? I want to know what your thoughts are.
I mean, it's possible. The question of the building of the pyramids is, to me, so open because we have so little evidence of who actually built them.
Yeah. But weren't you telling me, too, that Herodotus got a bunch of stuff wrong?
Yeah. Well, okay. So what I see when I read Herodotus' stuff is him saying, well, here's what I was told about this. And here's what I was told about that. Or I was told these 3 different things about this. You know? So he doesn't seem to be saying, here's the truth. He just says, here's what these priests told me in Memphis. You know, here's what I heard from these other priests and of the temple of Amun in this place. And then I went to the temple of Sobek and heard this, you know, whatever. And the
why should it be any different today? You know, from today. I mean, if you go to the pyramid, they're going to tell you who built it.
Yeah, that's right. And Herodotus was 450-ish BC, which would put him around 2,000 years post Khufu.
Yeah, so they're just going to tell you what they've figured out.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, we do think, you know, like, so then you have to look at the Atlantis story with Plato. Like, he's got the same thing happening in his story. You know, Solon shows up, and these priests are supposedly telling him a story that's 8,000 or 9,000 years old.
Right.
And we're like, sure, you know, totally that could be true. So, do we hold ourselves to the same standard? You know?
No. We've got...
Of course not.
No way, man. Double standards all the way. It's totally acceptable these days.
Yeah. And one of the things Herodotus says, for example, is that the Great Pyramid is 800 feet on a side and is the same tall.
Yeah.
Which is totally wrong. Now, it's not exactly clear when you read the, you know, is he saying the priest told him that, or is he just like rattling that off? Because the sides are around, I mean, they're not 800 feet, but they're, you know, close, 700 and something. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely not 800 feet tall. So it's weird. It's like, were the priests trolling him? Oh yeah, man. Thing's as tall as it is wide. And everybody hated the guy that built it, you know?
Yeah.
I just don't know. I don't know what to think about it. Herodotus was an interesting guy. And the other thing that, you know, speaking of double standards, mainstream archaeology has total double standards when it comes to Herodotus. He is gospel on the things that they want, and he's completely full of shit on the stuff they don't.
Right.
You know? So...
Yeah, but I mean, that's just a lot of things that you pick any person. Well, a lot of stuff they say is true. Mm-hmm. Everything else is total BS.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But it's like Manetho is treated the same way, and Josephus, you know, these historians, Pliny, you know, you read Pliny, you can't read Pliny anymore because all of his stuff is gone, but you can read commentary about his stuff. That's how we have evidence of it's secondary and third hand, you know, about Pliny, because Pliny set out to basically like write an encyclopedia of all knowledge. And some of the stuff that's in there, you're just like, okay, dude, what? You know? But I think he was supposed to have died at the explosion of Vesuvius, you know? And he was a natural philosopher. And yes, so Pliny's encyclopedia is basically... It's got interesting stuff in it, but most of it's bullshit, you know. But it isn't. But the thing is that Pliny didn't think it was bullshit, or he was like, "Here's what I've been told," because obviously he couldn't go everywhere,
right?
So yeah, I don't know, but to me, and this comes down to basically personal opinion. But on the question of the pyramids, it seems to me more likely that they are a product of an older lost civilization that had technology than that a much more recent civilization had hidden technology that they used hundreds of thousands of people to build, but still managed to hide the technology.
Yeah, I agree.
And, you know, the idea that, well, everybody hated them because it was so much work. And so all evidence of the building was destroyed or names were changed. Well, the names weren't changed, you know, like, I don't know. It seems to me more likely that if there wasn't a breakaway civilization during Egypt that had hidden technology, it seems more likely that there was just a much older advanced civilization, because that's also in the myths all over the world.
Right.
And it seems to be what the Egyptians themselves say, that they are a legacy of a much more ancient, much more advanced civilization. Now, could there have been, for example, in the Old Kingdom, an elite that had managed to recover some of the knowledge of that much more older civilization? Yes. And would they qualify?
Kept it hidden.
Yeah. And would they qualify as, and maybe used it as magic?
Yeah.
You know, yeah, playing the God gambit. Because like, if you look at how the pharaohs were treated, they were supposed to be they were the avatar of gods, you know. But then you're like, well, what did they really mean by gods? And they meant aspects of nature. So it's like the pharaoh was not God like we think of him now, but he's some personification of the natural world.
Yeah.
You know, and he's supposed to go through some initiate process, but you can easily see how that would become corrupted. And then suddenly they're just like, yes, I am the personification of Ra. You know, you should do everything that I want. And then, yeah, if they had little bits of tech left over, they could use it to, or even not tech, but just little bits of knowledge, like how to make static electricity.
Yeah.
And sort of build it up. And then you can make a nice arc and scare everybody in the temple and make them think that, you know, the gods are there with you and at your command or something. Yes, I can believe that. But did they have giant machines that they could use to build the pyramids? Or even small ones? I don't know. It just seems to me more likely that they're a product of a much older civilization. And I think Ben agrees with us on that. That seems to be his idea. Mm-hmm. I think this seems to be what Yusuf implies in a lot of the stuff he's talking about too, but I don't know what Yusuf thinks about a builder culture versus dynastic Egypt. I haven't talked to Ben about that. So, but all good questions and worth looking at both. Yes, I do think it's possible that the pyramids, maybe not the Serapeum boxes and some other anomalous artifacts, but maybe the pyramids themselves. And I lean in the direction that the pyramids were built in stages. Mm-hmm. And so some of them may be Old Kingdom dynastic construction. But I just think it's much more likely that all of the evidence of construction we see in the Old Kingdom and the textual references to this and even Herodotus's accounts with the priests is that what was happening then was some kind of reclamation slash, what's the word for it? Renaming project. Because we know that, you know, that writing your name on something you didn't build was a time-honored tradition in Egypt, at least in the later kingdoms.
Yeah, it wasn't been talking about Ramses or whatever.
Yeah.
Going and
the reason
claiming.
he's called Ramses the Great is because for a long time, modern people thought he basically built almost everything in Egypt. But eventually they figured out that no, he just wrote his name on everything there.
Yeah.
You know, and those are both exaggerations. They didn't think he built everything, and he didn't write his name on everything. But there was enough stuff to where they thought, wow, Ramses did all this stuff. But it turns out that he actually just not stole it, but, you know, just renamed it after himself.
Yeah.
Or in some cases, did the final touches in completing things on some project that a predecessor had done and then wrote his name over that guy's name. Like, I did this now, you know, it's mine.
Yeah.
I put in the last 3 blocks. I built it.
Yeah.
And there's evidence for this in the fact that, you know, the plaster had been put up, and then they had carved the cartouche of some other pharaoh's name in there, and Ramses had it replastered and his name carved into it. Mm-hmm. And then that plaster starts to sort of fall apart, and then suddenly you can see both sets of hieroglyphs overlaid with each other.
Yeah.
You know, there's a name for that. I can't remember right now, but they have a specific, it happens so often in Egypt that there's a specific word for multiple layers of hieroglyphs being cut into each other, and then all the plaster falling off, and you can see this weird, you know, jumbled glyph. And I think that's what the UFO tank and helicopter thing are supposed to be. There's a word for it, but yeah, I think, okay, if you have nothing but the tools that we see in the archaeological record, which are basically copper chisels, diorite pounding stones, using wood sleds and ropes, and nothing but manpower, I can see a massive Giza reclamation project taking 20 years and pissing off a lot of people and being very hard work for a bunch of people who are farmers. They're not stone carvers, because you know, you've got farmers on the Nile, and then there's a couple of months out of every year where the Nile floods, and this is the idea that that's when all the work showed up, because they couldn't farm anymore because their farms were underwater. So then they all show up and start dragging rocks around for the pharaoh.
Yeah.
So yes, 20 years of that every couple of months out of every year, because the rest of the time the farmers got to go back to their farms to make food for everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. So they are not working the whole time. So you may have scattered workforces on the plateau for the entire year, but farmers need to be farming their fields, and the vast majority of people along the Nile were farmers and priests and other things, but everybody was basically had little farms, and they're making food. So you need the farmers doing that so that you have enough food to survive. And then during the Nile flood, the farmers can all come help you drag rocks, but they're not skilled masons. And you can,
they might be skilled. Like some of them might be skilled masons.
Yeah,
but that's not their general occupation.
Right. They might. Yeah, some of them might be skilled masons, but they were skilled farmers.
Yeah, exactly.
And they farmed in marshes. They, there's not a whole lot of. I doubt they built a lot of stone stuff. They built wood things and. Yeah. They may have cut little canals.
They were for sure good builders.
Yeah,
all of them.
They were probably good builders, and they were good at using animals to do stuff. But you can't say, come over here, and here's this incredibly advanced tool, build the pyramid. It doesn't work that way. You can't do that now. Some guy that doesn't build stuff, or even if he does, walks into a shop. You don't hand him some advanced tool and let him start building shit. He has to learn how to use it, and I don't know. So I just.
But I think that's a good idea. Like this massive restoration project.
Yeah. Because they found what they call work villages, the remnants of work villages in Giza, and I'm just like, yeah, but and they're saying the workers were treated very well. They had very nice places to live and everything. So, they're kind of the mainstream is pushing this idea that these people that built these pyramids weren't slaves. I kind of agree with that. Mm-hmm. Slave labor is not going to make really awesomely precise buildings. Like maybe, I guess, if you have a couple of people that know what they're doing, but I don't know. We know there were Johnsons on the job. You can see the evidence.
Yeah.
But in the end, I think it comes down to personal opinion because there's so little evidence either way.
Yeah, I just think that both the precision work, the obvious differences in masonry style or architectural style, and the incorporation of these mathematical, the geometrical thing, what am I trying to, not constants, but
like sacred geometry and stuff.
Yeah, principles.
Yeah.
That are incorporated into the structures is that really to me kind of pushes it back, to something that's not really understood. All those things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but his argument is that there was some secret society that had all that information.
Yeah, but I agree with your point about it's more likely to me that it was just further back in antiquity than coexisting at the same time and being hidden.
Right. But
that there's no evidence of it. The thing that makes me that I think explains that there's no evidence for the machines is that it was just much older.
Yeah.
And so the evidence has been gone or reused or melted down or whatever.
Yeah.
Or just completely corroded.
Yeah, that's right. I thought of that too, that the tools should still be around unless it was much older. But, again, if they were like kept in secret, then maybe somebody's still doing that. That's, 2000 BC is not too long ago for for that secret society to still be around and still keeping that stuff secret.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I also am fully aware that my bias is that I want it to be older. So yes, I can make all kinds of arguments that it's older. So I'm just saying it's possible.
It's kind of hard to explain how you would build something like that, and it's so visible.
Yeah.
With some secret technology, and people not be writing about it.
Right.
And walking by, looking at it, and saying, "Wow, what are they doing that with?"
Yeah. You can't keep it secret if you're using it to build that thing. And no matter what kind of tools you had, you needed millions of them, or thousands at least, or hundreds, or if you had giant saws, like at least dozens. The project is enormous. So.
And it's not just in Egypt. It's all over the world that this kind of stuff was going on. And all over the world, we find the same types of things, that there were later cultures that repurposed them. It's more obvious in other places because there have been so much building in this same area. It's all, and people were digging and excavating and building, and it's all jumbled up.
Yeah.
But in South America, for example, with the Inca, it's really clear the differences, right? And they even have the names of the 3 different types of masonry, and they're
Unan, Hanan, and Ura, or something like that. Yeah.
Hanan Pacha, Uran Pacha, and,
and
something around. I don't remember them all.
Yeah.
But Pumapunku.
Yeah.
There's just so much, and the building style being similar to this really old style of building in Egypt is also suggestive.
Yeah.
That these were.
This was a global civilization.
Yeah. That these.
Or at least that they had global reach.
Yeah, that the styles were known about. In other words, like if there were a global civilization, maybe not just one culture, but multiple cultures that were in contact with each other, that noticed each other's artwork and architecture, learned from each other's astronomy and other sciences, and incorporated them into their own cultures. So yes, you in one place you see that it's distinct, but it also has an incredible similarity to this other place.
Yeah.
And they're both underneath all of the other stuff that we actually have historical records for, is the way I look at it. It's that's a big part of the clue. It's not looking at Egypt in isolation.
Yeah. Yeah, so somebody in Egypt was like looking at Peru and they're like, hey, I need your giant box nub builder guy.
Yeah, I'm digging a cave to put cool boxes in. I need the nubbing machine.
All right, let's take a break. Great emails and questions.
Yes.
Always remember we are like 97.3% wrong almost all the time.
Yeah.
But there's still 30% brain expansion guaranteed. Somehow.
That's right.
Somehow it works out.
A big part of the brain
podcast.
expansion is realizing you are pretty much almost always wrong.
That's right. That does expand the brain.
Yeah. So, next up, the Shamir. That's the official Shamir sound.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. You know, you want to make a giant box out of that mountain? Here you go.
Box made. Now you need the numbing machine.
Yeah. So I stumbled upon this Shamir thing when reading through ancient-texts.org in their Legends of the Jews, which is actually just a fantastic read.
Yeah.
It's really strange stuff, but it's not so much in verse like a lot of other ancient texts. It seem to be like in this weird sort of written in verse, which was I don't know. This is kind of an aside, but I think when we had that last meeting with Dave Matheson, who was it that brought up the song?
Yeah.
It's like
it's told in song.
Yeah, all of this stuff was told in song. These star myths and everything were told in song, and I'm just thinking about all the biblical verses and how they're so strangely written in this stanzas and and of course in translation you lose all of the contextual comparisons of things or the
it's like reading a giant book of lyrics. You don't really get the
you're not getting the rhyming. You're not getting the rhythm.
Yep.
You're not getting the sounds of the words that could be the same in that language, but that are different words when they're written. Yeah. You lose all that great stuff, that great material that makes it so memorable. Mm-hmm. And then we're just left with these weird, when you're trying to, as a translator, you're trying to translate this one word, which was meant to sort of play off of the meaning of another word as you're writing a poem or something, because it may sound very similar, and there's a sort of a contextual way of comparing those two things within the culture, it's all gone.
Yeah.
So they end up being really strange. You're reading it and you're like, what? What the hell are they talking about? Anyway,
this is why you got to use math.
Oh yeah, so
squares and stuff.
Yeah, so the Legends of the Jews is just told as, kind of like a narrative. It's just these stories that were passed along, and I think certain people at certain times in history decided to write them all down.
Yeah.
And so there were collections. But anyway, I've always been fascinated by that idea, and it appears to be mostly in the Jewish tradition.
Yeah.
Or the Hebrew tradition. I'm not sure if I'm getting that right, but it's in the Legends of the Jews. And I've tried to look around in other cultural references to some tool or some sword or some device or that was able to cut stone or a tool used for building. And I couldn't find... there was basically one other reference to something like that was in South America.
Yeah.
And that was the pico...
It's a bird.
The pico bird or something. And that reference was from Percy Fawcett.
Yeah. They use the plant or something.
Yes.
To hollow out.
So for those of you who don't know about the main, the Jewish story of the Shamir, it was supposedly used to build Solomon's temple. Solomon found out about it because, according to their tales, their stories, the Shamir was created during the 6 days of creation.
Yeah, on the twilight of the sixth day, which was like a very special twilight in which all the demons and other magical creatures were created. They all showed up right at that same time, and some of them had very specific purposes for creation in the future. Shamir being one of them, supposedly. Yeah.
And so the Shamir was maybe a worm or maybe a plant, but it was no hard thing was able to withstand it. Basically, it was able to cut anything. So,
and it would burst metal and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So I think Moses first used it to engrave the 12 tribes of Israel onto the stones that were in the breastplate.
Yeah.
And it was said that he wrote on them with an ink, and then he held the Shamir over them, and the ink sank into the stones.
Yeah.
So it's kind of got this idea of it either cuts stone or it softens it. It's not clear exactly how it works.
Yeah, and in other legends, they say you could take it and draw a line, and the stone would split along that line very cleanly, like without it didn't cut. It was like a yeah, and iron could not withstand it. Glass, there's all kinds of like you could just place it on things and it would shatter them. It couldn't all these hard materials would shatter.
That's right. So I have this website that has just this really interesting collection of the different ways this story was told. And it is wikisource.org, The Curious Myths of the Middle Ages /Shamir. And it's spelled on this website, SCHAMIR. Which it has multiple different spellings and even some different words. And I don't think this was written by someone who English was their first language. It seems a little strange, so I'll have to...
Just paraphrase it?
Some of it, yeah. But I wanted to go through some of these because I think there's a lot of symbolism in the stories that surround the Shamir. Yeah. And I'm curious about what analyzing that, what could that mean? What could these symbols mean? So as Solomon was about to build the temple without the use of iron, which was the command by God, right? Yeah. No iron.
Iron can be used as weapons.
Bloodshed
and everything. So he wasn't allowed to use any iron on the stones of the temple because it was a place of peace.
Yeah. So his wise men drew his attention to the stones of the high priest's breastplate, which had been cut and polished by something harder than themselves. This was the Shamir, which was able to cut where iron would not bite. Thereupon Solomon summoned the spirits to inform him of the whereabouts of this substance. They told him the Shamir was a worm of the size of a barleycorn, but so powerful that the hardest flint could not resist him. The spirits advised Solomon to seek Asmodeus, king of the demons, who would give him further information. When Solomon inquired where Asmodeus was to be met with, they replied that on a distant mountain he had dug a huge cistern out of which he daily drank. Yeah, so I should skip all this. It just goes off on this whole thing about how he tricks Asmodeus. They get him drunk and stuff. Let's see.
Oh, they spike the cistern?
Yeah. Let me see. Okay, so Asmodeus eventually he tells Solomon that the Shamir was the property of the Prince of the Sea.
Yeah.
And that prince entrusted none with the mysterious worm except the moorhen, which had taken an oath of fidelity to him.
So I also saw this when I was looking into this, that bird referred to as the wood grouse.
Yes.
Okay.
And you're going to see that. There's a lot of different birds. It's always a bird.
Yeah.
This is one of the symbols, right?
Yeah.
I looked up, originally when I found this story, I looked up the moorhen to see if okay, what does it do? What are its behaviors?
Yeah.
But I didn't realize at the time that it was so many different birds throughout the different iterations of the story.
Right. So basically bird is the symbol,
yes.
not necessarily a specific kind. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know who the Prince of the Sea is, but I think somewhere they talk about that.
Poseidon was...
Maybe, I don't know. Okay, so the moorhen takes the Shamir with her to the tops of the mountains, splits them, and injects seeds, which grow and cover the naked rocks. Wherefore the bird is called Nagar Tura, the mountain carver. If Solomon desires to possess himself of the worm, which the Shamir is in this part of the story is talked about as a living worm that's tiny, he must find the nest of the moorhen and cover it with a plate of glass so that the mother bird could not get at her young without breaking the glass. She would seek the Shamir for this purpose, and the worm must be obtained from her. So it goes on to describe
Solomon sends out some flunky.
They do just that, right? At first it tells you exactly what you have to do, and then it tells you how they did exactly all of those things. And so in this one, he terrifies the bird after it breaks the glass with it, and the bird drops the worm and then flees.
Yeah.
And he gets the Shamir. And then it says afterwards that the moorhen was so distressed at having broken her oath to the Prince of the Sea that she slew herself.
Yeah, that's right. I saw that in a lot of the stories too. That the bird is so upset when it's stolen that she kills herself.
Yeah. And I think that's the only one of the stories that has that part in it, which is interesting. So I got to skip ahead to find the next one. Okay, so in another story, Solomon went to his fountain where he found the demon Sakar, whom he captured by a ruse and chained down. Solomon pressed his ring to the chains, and Sakar uttered a cry so shrill that the earth quaked. Quoth Solomon, "Fear not, I shall restore you to liberty, if you will tell me how to burrow noiselessly after minerals and metals." And he says, "I know not how to, but the raven can tell you. Place over her eggs a sheet of crystal, and you shall see how the mother will break it." Solomon did so, and the mother brought a stone and shattered the crystal. "Whence got you that stone?" asked Solomon, because obviously he can speak to all the animals because he got wisdom.
Yeah.
"It is the stone Samur," answered the raven, and that one's spelled Samur. "It comes from a desert in the uttermost east." So the monarch, Solomon, sent some giants to follow the raven and bring him a suitable number of stones.
Go into the desert and bring me stones, giants.
Stones for cutting.
Which stones, my lord? Yeah. All of them.
According to another version, the bird is an eagle, and the Shamir is the stone of wisdom. Possessed of this Shamir, Solomon wrought the stones for his temple. So then it goes on and let's see, talks about the rabbis arguing about various aspects.
Yes, I saw a lot of that. It's interesting. It also, I began to think of Quant Suff. You know, they're having these, I don't know how to describe them. They're like arguments about textual and literary references to things from the context of other textual and literary things.
Okay, so let's, minor correction here. Rabbinical fantasy has developed other myths concerning this mysterious force, resident in worm or stone. On the second day of creation were created the well by which Jacob met Rebekah, the manna which fed the Israelites, the wonder-working rod of Moses, the ass which spake to Balaam, and the Shamir, the means whereby without iron tools Solomon was to build the house of God.
Oh, okay, so this is a new development, that it was on the second day of creation these things were made?
Well, it's just, they're just talking about
rabbinical fantasy. Yeah. Okay.
So it says the Shamir is not in early rabbinical fable a worm. The Treatise Soda gives the first indication of its being regarded as something more than a stone by terming it a creature. So here's a quote. Our rabbis have taught us that Shamir is a creature as big as a barley corn, created in the Hexameron, and that nothing can resist it.
The Hexameron being the sixth twilight.
Yeah, maybe that's right, yeah. How is it preserved? It is wrapped in a wisp of wool and kept in a leaden box full of small grains like barley meal.
Yeah.
After the building of the temple, the Shamir vanished. And so from here, the story passed to the Greeks. And so I'm not sure how to pronounce this guy's name, but it kind of sounds like alien. A-E-L-I-A-N. Alien relates of some Greek word, or hupo, which is, I guess it's the bird. This is the bird, that a bird had once a nest in an old wall in which there was a rent. The proprietor plastered over this crack. The hupo, finding that she could not get to her young, flew away in a quest of the plant Greek word, which she sought and applied to the plaster, which at once gave away and admitted her to her young. Then she went forth to seek food, and the man again stopped up the hole. But once more the hupo removed the obstacle by the same means. And this took place a third time again. What Alien relates of the hupo, Pliny tells of the woodpecker. This bird, he says, brings up its young in holes, and if the entrance to them be plugged up, never so tight, I'm assuming, plugged up ever so tight, the bird is able to make the plug burst out. In the English Gesta Romanorum is the following story. There lived in Rome a noble emperor who loved the virtue of compassion above everything. Therefore he desired to know which of all the birds was most kindly affectioned towards its young. One day the emperor was wandering in the forest when he lit upon the nest of a great bird called the ostrich, in which was the mother with her young. The king took the nest along with the poults to his palace and put it into a glass vessel. This mother, the mother bird saw, and unable to reach her little ones, she returned to the wood, and after an absence of 3 days came back with a worm in her beak, called Thumer. This she dropped on the glass, and by the power of the worm, the glass was shivered, and the young flew away after their mother. When the emperor saw this, he highly commended both the affection and the sagacity or sagacity?
Yeah, sagacity.
Sagacity of the ostrich, on which we may remark that a portion of that sagacity was wanting to those who applied the myth to that bird, which of all others is singularly deficient in the qualities with which the king created it or credited it. I don't know. It's
That's
confusing.
weird. Yeah,
it's confusing. Let's see.
So the bird was smart, and he was commending it for being smart. Sort of.
Okay.
That's kind of what he was saying, I think. and everybody else should be that smart and use that worm.
Okay. There you go.
I don't know.
I don't know. But okay, the point is the symbolism, right?
Yes.
And the comparative legends, I guess.
Yeah.
This is not really, I guess this is
Thumare.
This is not really mythology. This is
Legendary.
Spoken words of the people. It's not really in the ancient in the literary texts, but this is like collections of stories from the proletariat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so I want to bring up some of this stuff about the before you go on there about this sixth twilight. So this is from I don't know what this website is. Kabbalah Online, I guess. It's this section is just called the true essence of the Shamir. It says the Mishnah relates that the Shamir was created on the sixth day of creation at the twilight of Sabbath Eve. This elaborates on the significance of this point. The entire physical world created during the 6 days is governed by the laws of nature. Not having been created exactly within this time frame, the Shamir is therefore supernatural. The other exceptional phenomena created during the first Sabbath twilight relate in some way to the Shamir, and these include the demons, the ram which Abraham sacrificed in place of Isaac, the first pair of tongs which were then used to make other instruments, Moses' staff, Adam and Eve's clothes, fire, and the mouth of Balaam's donkey, the pillar of fire and the pillar of clouds that led the children of Israel through the desert, and the vessel in which the manna was preserved in the Holy of Holies in the temple.
See, again, this is like it.
There are all these very old symbols.
Yeah, and this reminds me of think of this idea of a knowledge keeper, brotherhood or whatever it is. They're not going to go to the temple and try to tell the priests hey, you need to this. This is very reminiscent of the what are the stories? The stories that Jesus tells, for example.
Parables.
The parables, right? These are stories for the people.
Yeah.
And so it seems like they're given these set of symbols, these repeating symbols.
Yes.
And that's what preserves them. It's cool, weird story.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some kids hear it and they're like, okay, let's go put this glass over this bird's nest, and they're trying to do this stuff literally.
Yeah.
But there's a hidden esoteric meaning to it all.
Yeah. And also I would just say that part of what makes me think of this, when I'm hearing these things this was created in a period that wasn't part of creation, I start thinking science fiction because that's where I go, right?
There you go. That's good.
And so there's plenty of not even theoretical, but incredibly hypothetical objects that come about due to modern physics, and the idea of the creation of the universe and the stuff that happens at the very, in the instances after the Big Bang. And so you can get some really strange objects out of these highly energetic states in the universe. And nobody's ever been able to say that whether they exist or not, but it kind of reminds me of that they're saying these objects showed up at the twilight of creation.
Yeah.
Some
types of material that we're able to solidify through that really strange process.
Yeah, and they're incredibly rare and and
of course they came down from heaven.
Yeah, right.
To earth.
Yes.
And they were, probably given up by the goddess from the bottom of the lake.
Yeah. And the idea that because they're exactly. And the idea that because they're created in this dawn or twilight of creation, that they're sort of that they appear before our realm totally shows up. Mm-hmm. That's very reminiscent of you could think, all of these weird, like microscopic black holes, for example, are one object that has never been proven to exist, but hypothetically could because there were temperatures and pressures during the intense, very early parts of the Big Bang that could turn single particles into singularities.
Yeah.
And then there's hyperstrings and all kinds of other strange things that could show up during this the twilight of creation before the real universe actually appears.
That's cool.
So you got
That's
demons.
Very cool correlation.
Yeah, and so like the demons would be like forces of nature, and you know, and I don't know about the clothes and the donkey and all that kind of stuff, but just that they're I think it's pointing to aspects of nature that may be what does Randall call them? Relict artifacts from the creation of the universe. That's really cool.
That's really
and some
cool
of them ends up on, you know, some of them end up on Earth, or they're just fundamental things about nature that are now spread out through the entire universe because they were generated in the twilight of creation, i.e. the Big Bang. So, yeah. Okay, I'm done
Very cool.
with that part.
All right. So I'm just continuing. This is one giant page with a whole bunch of stuff, and it has some. It has other things that are written in other languages and names and things that I can't pronounce. So I'm scrolling through to try to find the stories that are relevant, the actual parts, because I don't want to read the whole thing. But so there's another one. Let's see. Okay, so somebody else is telling this story. This person is talking about Solomon and how he cut the stones of the temple with the blood of a little worm called the Thamir. Now, this is Thamir.
Okay. That guy had a lisp. He would give him a Thamir.
Yes. Okay. So he
Or the
says,
scribe was listening to the guy with a lisp.
yeah, he says, the temple with the blood of a little worm called the Thamir, which when sprinkled on the marble, made it easy to split. And the way in which Solomon obtained the worm was this. Here we go. He had an ostrich whose chick he put in a glass bottle.
Yeah.
Seeing this, the ostrich ran to the desert and brought the worm, and with its blood fractured the vessel. Okay.
So now you have to use the blood of this worm.
And then this person says, outside of the story, I guess this guy is
Commenting on the story?
yes, Gervais of Tilbury, I guess maybe is who it is.
Okay.
He says, and in our time, in the reign of Pope Alexander III, when I was a boy, there was found at Rome a vial full of milky liquid, which, when sprinkled on any kinds of stone, made them receive such sculpture as the hand of the graver was wont to execute.
Wow.
It was a vial discovered in a most ancient place, the matter and art of which was a subject of wonder to the Roman people.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, so his name is Gervais.
Pope
And
Alexander.
he says he drew from the comister regum lib, 3 eyes, a C, and the number 5. I guess that's a library reference.
Yeah, the library, yeah. What pope did he say? In our time, Pope
the
what?
Pope Alexander III.
Okay, let me look that up and find out when that was.
Okay, so here's another one. Okay, this is what he's saying. Gervais, this is the next part. Gervais drew from comister, who is another name. He says, if comister, I suppose, is saying, if you wish to burst chains. Oh no, this is Albertus Magnus. If you wish to burst chains, go into the wood and look for a woodpecker's nest, where there are young. Climb the tree and choke the mouth of the nest with anything you like. As soon as the mother sees you do this, she flies off for a plant, which she lays on the stoppage. This bursts, and the plant falls to the ground under the tree, where you must have a cloth spread for receiving it. But then Albertus says this is a fancy of the Jews. So I guess he's just reporting a legend of the Jews,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, so Pope Alexander III was Bishop of Rome and head of the Catholic Church and ruler of the Papal States from 7th of September 1159 until
That's builder times
yeah,
right there.
and then Albertus Magnus, Manly P. Hall says that that guy was like alchemist supreme. He was the mentor of Thomas Aquinas, who became a saint.
Yeah.
And the reason Aquinas became the saint was because Albertus handed, like, basically, even though they had this rivalry or something that Albertus taught him all the magic he knew. But yeah, in Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of the Ages, he talks about Albertus.
Does he mention the Shamir in there? I don't remember.
I haven't come across it yet. I'm going through the whole thing right now.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so here's another one. Conrad von Megenberg relates, there is a bird, which in Latin is called merops, but which we in German term Baumheckel, which nests in high trees, and when one covers its children with something to impede the approach of the bird, it brings an herb and holds it over the obstacle, and it gives way. The plant is called Herba meropis, or woodpecker plant, and is called in magical books Chora, or Chora, Chora. In Normandy, the swallow knows how to find upon the sea beach a pebble, which has the marvelous power of restoring sight to the blind. The peasants tell of a certain way of obtaining possession of this stone. You must put out the eyes of the swallow's young, whereupon the mother bird will immediately go in quest of the stone. When she has found it and applied it, she will endeavor to make away with the talisman, that none may discover it. But if one has taken the precaution to spread a piece of scarlet cloth below the nest, the swallow, mistaking it for a fire, will drop the stone upon it.
What? It's so strange how these are spread out in all these different...
I know, that's what I'm
It's
saying.
the same story.
It's the same.
I mean, sort of.
I mean, the symbolism is the same.
Yeah.
Where does this? Why do they put a piece of glass over the bird's nest? That was the one thing I've started to wonder. Why? What does it matter, right? The Jewish legends are very specific. A piece of glass or a piece of crystal has to be over the nest, so that the mother
can see the young.
She
but
sees them and can't get to them.
Can't get to them.
Yeah. But in all the stories, the bird goes and fetches some hidden object, brings it back, and you trick it in some way or kill it or whatever.
To get the object.
To get the object.
Yeah. That's so strange. Do you think this is star mythology? I mean, are we looking at...
We need to talk to Matheson about this for sure. We should have him on.
Yeah.
All right. I met with the story in Iceland, and I don't know who is speaking here. There, the natives tell that there is a stone of such wondrous power that the possessor can walk invisible, can, at a wish, provide himself with as much stock fish and corn brandy as he may desire, can raise the dead, cure disease, and break bolts and bars. In order to obtain this prize, one must hard boil an egg from the raven's nest, then replace it, and secret spelled with an E at the end.
Secrete, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
But the context, I think, is to secret oneself until the mother bird, finding one of her eggs, resists all her endeavors to infuse warmth into it, flies off, and brings back a black pebble in her beak, with which she touches the boiled egg and restores it to its former condition.
What?
At this moment, she must be shot and the stone be secured.
How many people have tried these
in
things?
Iceland. Okay. Okay.
Now, I did not know that the Shamir could make endless amounts of brandy.
Yeah. I mean, hey, man, we need stone.
This tool.
Because brandy so far has proven to be hard to make. In this form of the superstition, the Shamir has the power of giving life. This probably connects it with those stories so rife in the Middle Ages of birds or weasels which were able to restore the dead to life by means of a mysterious plant. Avicenna relates in his 8th book of Animals that it was related to him by a faithful old man that he had seen 2 little birds squabbling and that one was overcome. It therefore retired and ate of a certain herb. Then it returned to the onslaught, which when the old man observed frequently, he took away the herb. And when the bird came and found the plant gone, it set up a great cry and died. And this plant was Lactua agrestis. I don't know. That's kind of a...
Well, it's, you know what this reminds me of too? Again, we need to take a break here, but again, going back to Manly P. Hall, he talks about how in the Secret Teachings that stories like these would be spread on purpose because they contained hidden alchemical information to people who could understand them. In other words, they were telling you things about nature. I mean, I'm not an alchemist, so I don't know what they were telling you. But in other words, and he also described how these people would write stories, fanciful tales, or even biographies of each other or of people that didn't exist. And anybody reading it would think it's just a fairy tale or it's a biography of some person. But actually, it's full of symbols.
That's right.
Another alchemist / natural philosopher / person who studies the mysteries would understand.
Yep. And I would say that as you read through all this stuff, it starts to take on, you can see the similarities in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yeah.
There's this plant
hidden
in the bottom of the ocean, and he goes and gets it, and the snake comes and takes it. Right.
Yeah.
It's almost
it's the reverse. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's life-giving. It's so it's taking on a lot of different forms here.
Yeah. Well, let's take a break. This is good stuff. All right.
History the way you wish it was taught. Brothers of the Serpent podcast, final segment, I think.
Yep.
So yeah, continuing on with these stories of the
Shamir,
the Samur, the Shamir.
What was the other
the
one?
worm.
Thumul something? Shit, there was another one that was very different. Yeah. Thumule.
Thames or I don't know. So there's a story. One of the stories I'm skipping here is of like two weasels. One weasel is like dies or something, and the other one, seeing its companion having died, goes and fetches the root and brings this root back. And the root is from an herb that has a red flower. Anyway, lays the root on his mouth, and it brings him back to life. So we're kind of getting away from the bird and the glass covering its nest type of thing, and more into
and the thing that can cut stone, and now it's more like
now getting into these herbs with flowers and animals that are fetching them, and people that are noticing and tricking the animals, or just learning from the animals how to do this. So another tale from the same place, because this was a French tale. There's another one that's quite shorter, but in this tale, the flower is yellow. It is a marigold, which, when touched on a certain morning by the bare foot of one who has a pure heart, gives the power to understand the language of birds. Now we're back to birds.
Yeah, okay. And the language of birds, which is the
secret. And this is one of the ways Solomon was able to discover the Shamir.
By talking to the eagles or whatever?
He talks to the birds, This is the same story as that of Polyidus and Glaucus. Polyidus observed a serpent stealing towards the corpse of a young prince. He slew it. Then came another serpent. Finding its companion dead, it fetched a root by which it restored life to the dead serpent. Polyidus obtained possession of the plant and therewith revived Glaucus. I guess Glaucus is the prince. In the Greek romance of Rhodanthe and Docicles is an incident of similar character. Rhodanthe swallows a poisonous goblet of wine and lies as one dead, deprived of sense and motion. In the meanwhile, Docicles and Cratander are chasing wild beasts in the forest. There they find a wounded bear, which seeks a certain plant, and, rolling upon it, recovers health and vigor instantaneously. The root of this herb was white, its flowers of a rosy hue, attached to stalk of purplish tinge. Docicles picked the herb, and with it returned to the house, where he found Rhodanthe apparently dead. With the wondrous plant, he, however, was able to restore her. The same story is told in Germany, in Lithuania, among the modern Greeks and ancient Scandinavians. Germany teems with stories of the marvelous properties of the luck flower. A man chances to pluck a beautiful flower, which in most instances is blue, and this he puts in his breast or in his hat. Passing along a mountainside, he sees the rocks gape before him, and entering he sees a beautiful lady who bids him help himself freely to the gold which is scattered on all sides and in profusion.
Ooh, that sounds like a trap.
He crams the glittering nuggets into his pockets and is about to leave when she calls after him. Forget not the best. Thinking that she means him to take more, he feels his crammed pockets, and finding that he has nothing to reproach himself with in that respect, he seeks the light of day, entirely forgetting the precious blue flower, which had opened to him the rocks, and which has dropped on the ground.
Okay, now we're getting back to stones.
That's right. He puts the flower in his cap, and he sees the opening to the cave full of all the metals, right?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
He takes all the metals and forgets the tool that...
Yeah.
Yeah, this is interesting. Once upon a time, a shepherd was driving his flock over the something. When wearing his tramp, he leaned upon his staff. Instantly, the mountain opened, for in that staff was the springwort, which is in quotes. Within he saw the princess Isle, I guess, who bade him fill his pockets with gold. The shepherd obeyed and was going away when the princess exclaimed, "Forget not the best,"
Forget not the best.
alluding to his staff, which lay against the wall. But he, misunderstanding her, took more gold, and the mountain clashing together severed him in twain. In some versions of the story, it is the pale blue flower. Quote, "The blue flower, which Brahmins say blooms nowhere but in paradise." It's just cool stuff, dude. Let's see.
The pale blue flame.
In the story of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, it is a word sesame, which makes the rocks part and gives admission to the treasures within, and it is oblivion of the magic word which brings destruction upon the luckless wretch within. But sesame is the name of a well-known Eastern plant, Sesamum oriental, so that probably in the original form of the Persian tale absorbed into the Arabian Nights, a flower was employed to give admission to the mountain. But classic antiquity has also its rock-breaking plant, the saxifraga, whose tender rootlets penetrate and dissolve the hardest stones with a force for which the ancients were unable to account. But that is a really cool connection right there.
Yeah.
It's sesame, open sesame. It's the same story.
Yeah.
That's freaking awesome, dude. I love this stuff.
Yeah. I'm sure, I think that was just an Italian guy telling the door to open. Open sesame!
Hey.
Hey, open sesame!
Yeah, so it goes on. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here with a lot of Hebrew words, which it's going to be probably not good reading, especially for me. But anyway, so from there I went to the Pico flower. Now there's a whole bunch of renditions of that in the South American stuff, but from what I could tell, this all came from Percy Fawcett. Now, I would assume that he was hearing this from the locals, this story of the bird, because people, the scriptards are out there like, this bird does not exist, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, okay, the bird doesn't exist.
So now he's hearing like what seems to be a...
it's the same story.
Yeah.
The bird makes its nests in the rocks.
Yeah.
And it takes this leaf of this flower and it rubs the rocks with the leaf and it softens the rocks and it allows the bird to dig it out and make little holes.
Yeah.
And in one of the things he talks about finding a giant, well, I don't know how big it was, but a terracotta jar
Yep.
that had some strange liquid in it that it leaked out on the floor and just softened the whole floor. It was a stone floor.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of debate about that, and the Skirps are saying this.
I find this,
but that story is told in these other Jewish legends, right?
Yeah.
Or well, no, that was the one that was Greek or something.
That's what I'm saying. I find this interesting
Roman.
because if you think of Percy Fawcett in the context of him out there in South America talking to the locals, asking
Yes.
about
That's what I'm saying.
a lost civilization.
And they give him
And
the
they
story
start telling him this story.
of a bird
Yeah.
that has the ability to go seek some secret thing and soften stone with it. And
Yeah.
it's just like,
Like, in other words, they're connecting that story somehow to what he's asking about.
that's right. That's right.
Even if it isn't a literal connection. In other words, the bird itself doesn't exist.
It doesn't even matter what bird it is.
Right.
But they're, the Skirps are out there saying like, oh, the Pico bird doesn't even exist. And I'm like, you're missing the point completely.
Yeah. And the other thing is this a pre-Columbian story?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, are they getting this story from the same most ancient source that all these European and Mediterranean people got it from?
That's what I'm talking about.
This story has been passed down since the civilization that had the tools that could do this.
Right. So
Or are we taking it too literally in that sense?
I don't know. I think what I've been trying to think about is what is the symbolism here? Basically, the idea is if you really just scrub it down to just the fundamental basis to me is observe nature, right? The key to doing this is contained in some natural thing.
Yeah.
In other words, you can go out and make an observation, and then there's a specific way that you can acquire the means to do the same thing that nature does. So you could say the same thing about a water jet, right?
Yeah.
You could go out and you could go to the riverbank and you could watch how the river cuts the rocks easily.
Okay.
Or something like that. I mean, that's
what I was
kind of
just thinking.
just
It's
cut
like,
and
what
drive
does a
it.
bird symbolize? The wind. It symbolizes the...
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to...
Yeah.
I think the bird probably has more meaning than just like, oh yeah, go sit by the riverbank and watch nature cut rocks. I think it does have
Yeah.
a deeper meaning, but my point is in terms of like looking for the truth, is there any truth in this story? Technically, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Or we could go full Ancient Aliens and say the bird was some sort of flying device.
Yeah. It is really interesting how with the different places the bird has to go.
Yeah.
Right? Is it? And it's going out into the desert to bring a stone.
Yeah, or it's going out over the ocean, or it made the oath to the Prince of the Sea.
Yes. But it uses, and that's another one that really gives you the idea that, okay, this is a force of nature.
Yeah.
A force of creation, for lack of a better word, where it's the bird is using this tool to cut the rocks in the mountains to drop seeds in to grow.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, there's a natural force involved here.
Yeah. Yeah, and the idea that whatever the Shamir itself was showed up, in the twilight of creation.
Yeah, that's really cool too.
That implies it's some kind of fundamental process, right? And in terms of the way we look at physics today, it would be the same thing as everything else that was created during that twilight, which would be fundamental properties of the universe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the fact
It's
that
almost
they're
like
always insisting that it's this tiny thing. And I'm thinking like, how tiny really?
Yeah.
I mean, is it really tiny?
When they talk about it as a life form, there are some, people conjecturing or whatever that it's actually so tiny you can't see it.
Yeah.
Right. Like they were thinking it's a worm.
Yeah.
No, it must be a worm. Like you've got this liquid and you're putting it on there and it just, and they're like, okay, there's obviously some worm in there that's eating it.
Yeah.
And maybe because if you don't keep it in a certain situation where, the worm has some food or whatever, it will die and no longer be. But, like oxidation or something like that would cause whatever is happening to it just become inert.
Or it could be like an actual wormhole. Like,
Full science fiction, folks.
Yeah.
Wormholes.
yeah, a tiny one. If you just had if you had the mouth of a wormhole and you could move it around somehow, it would go through anything.
Yeah, that's true. Interesting. Yeah.
Because the material that it encountered would go through the wormhole. and out the other side.
Yeah, that's why we're using this. This is the official Shamir sound bit.
Like one of the things that one of my favorite things in science fiction, was this idea of a monofilament wire. I think Larry Niven had this in a bunch of his stories. He used them all the time. And so the concept is that the wire is actually a single molecule. It's it's just a molecule that's incredibly long. But the wire is only the molecule's width. So you have to handle it very carefully, right? How strong it is about molecular force. But it doesn't matter how strong it is. It'll just, if I held it above you and let go, it would just slice right through you as it fell to the ground, right? Because it's only a molecule thick. It's perfectly sharp. And then later in some of his stories, when he introduces the concept of a stasis field, which is think of a physical device that could actually seal you off from the rest of the universe and stop entropy inside of a specific area. Okay, what would that look like? To the outside universe, it would be for example, if the area that it did this to was a sphere, then it would look like a mirror, a perfect mirror, right? There would be
all energy reflected.
Yeah, all energy reflected and everything inside of it perfectly contained. Entropy does not pass in there.
Interaction.
Time doesn't pass. There's no interaction. So anything maintained in a stasis field is basically frozen to the rest of the universe, but you can move the field around. Okay, so that's really science fiction, right? Now I've got this area that's completely cut off from the rest of the universe, and I can move it around in that universe, but in the interior, there's no interaction. Whatever's in there is perfectly preserved. If I turned a stasis field on around you and then left you for a million years, and then something came and turned it off, you would have your experience would be that
instantaneous.
There would just be this instant change.
Yeah.
Because you would pass no time inside the field. So then Larry Niven's like, all right, so now I've got a monofilament wire that I put a stasis field around it. Right? And he called and they came in as a little device. It was like a handle that you could hold. And you would push a button and a little sphere would come out of the top, extending the wire out. And then once it got 2.5, 3 feet long, it would stop and then put a stasis field around the wire. And you had a sword that would cut anything.
Oh, yeah. That's cool. Just don't hit the top of it on anything.
Yeah. Well, it had a little glowing sphere at the end so you could see it. You can't see the wire in between. You just know it's there. So, just ideas like that. Like, how advanced do you have to be to build like a carbon nanotube wire?
I don't know.
That if you had something that could hold on to it at either end, like even if it would look, even if you made it manual, where at either end it ended in some handles that you could grab onto, you just stretch them out and you just drop them past the stone and it just cleaves that rock perfectly. You can cut jewels with it. Remember what Graham said when he was looking into the legends of this, that it was totally silent.
Yeah.
So if you had a tool like that and it was just a monofilament molecular wire stretched between two things and you could just, and it would cut whatever, even jewels. Now, the idea of doing it from a distance, like the finger of God stuff, that's a completely different thing.
Having the ink sink into the stones.
Sink into the stone, yes.
But I don't really worry about those details too much. To me...
I'm not worried about them either. I'm just let's go in full speculation here.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I'm saying.
But a thin wire is like a worm, and if you found it and it was all balled up into a little thing, it would be like a little seed. And you'd have to untangle the dang thing.
That would be a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
lots of lost fingers.
Yes. Don't do it manually. Yeah.
Would it cut itself?
I don't think so. That would be like, it breaking its own molecular bonds.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, when it cut through things, it wouldn't be cutting molecules, but it would be severing the bonds between the molecules, I guess, right? But we already have ideas of this now. Not necessarily monofilament, but a nanotube is an idea, like the idea of building a very thin cable out of carbon molecules, and then you sort of braid them together to get something you can handle. Nanotubes.
That'd be cool.
I mean, the whole concept of the space elevator. They're saying you need something with that kind of tensile strength for it to work. And they can make them. They just only can make them in tiny amounts. So, yeah, I like to think about what it could be, and I think that in some cases we're looking at multiple tool types, though.
Yeah.
There also seem to be, like, the polishing on the boxes is a liquid, which is really interesting because.
But it could be the same principle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially if you're talking about a worm. Like me, I was thinking chemically.
Yeah.
And I did read quite a few articles. I think there's one on Ancient Origins where the guy is like, hey, they were using acid.
Yeah.
And he talks about the specific type of acid, and then he talks about the pico plant, and he talks about these various plants that have this acid, and that alchemists of the day may have learned how to, separate this acid from the plants or the molecules.
Yeah.
Why can't I think of words right now on the podcast?
This is your job.
I know.
Thinking of words.
It's terrible. Anyway, they would get these
To isolate the acid?
Yes, to isolate it. Thank you. In their alchemical labs.
Yeah.
And then they would use the acid. They'd put it on there, and it was basically, his point was not that this was stone softening that you would then re-harden, because there's a lot of misconception about that. Or maybe it's not misconception. People are looking at the legends and the myths and saying, yeah, well, maybe they used something and they softened the stone.
Yeah.
And then they were able to shape it. And the point is, well, once you've done that, it's not going to go back and be that stone again.
Right. Yeah.
It's just not going to be the same.
Granite is formed under. I've never understood how. Even if you had something that could soften granite, it would not reform into granite.
The specific types of bonds that are necessary are created under incredible temperature and pressure.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, can those be recreated some chemical way? I don't know, but
Yeah, I don't know. But the point is that if you had some acid that would etch granite, which there is an acid, I can't remember what it was, like hydrofluoric or something like that.
Yeah.
That would literally eat the granite away. Now, you could use that to polish it, because we've done the same thing with, with muriatic and what's the crystal that we get here?
Calcite.
The calcite.
Yeah.
It eats it away, so you can put it in a mild solution and it will polish it
beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
you could do this, and it would be a liquid. And if there was a droplet that ran,
Yeah.
you would see it.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay, so that's understandable.
Mm-hmm.
However, allowing you to scoop out
Is a different thing.
a totally different thing. So if you were to roughly grind that thing, and then use a whole bunch of acid to eat it down to a nice smooth surface,
Yeah.
totally different, right? That's understandable. But cutting a precision flat surface and having tool marks, that's not an acid.
No.
These are not, and so I disagree with the guy on Ancient Origins that this is not, that was not their method.
Yeah.
Could it be a method for polishing? Yes.
Yes.
Etching, absolutely.
Yep.
But cutting through these solid blocks, because they're not all polished in that way, and there's obvious tool marks, as Ben has showed us. So I don't think that's the answer. But it is interesting to think about the alchemists getting, actually making this acid and using it, right? It would become known, and the builders, the stone masons would use it. Obviously, they would.
Yeah.
And maybe they developed ways to aid in the splitting of stones. Once they made they cut a groove, and then they just keep putting acid in it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And just aid in the grinding away process.
Yeah.
But this is still not going to result in machine surfaces.
Right.
It just won't.
Especially not 3D like curving machined surfaces like we see.
Yeah,
out there.
but I will admit that could explain some of the interesting tales about the plants and how the bird utilized the plant or whatever. It's just,
How is it breaking glass though?
But it's interesting that I love where it gets into the language of birds, right?
Yeah.
This is a really mysterious
clue.
thing, yeah, because there's all these birds having something to do with the Shamir.
Yeah.
And then you get into the language of birds, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
is this the scientific language
Yeah.
that they were using, that the learned people of the time were using to communicate their knowledge or whatever?
Yes.
Is this, yeah. So
Yeah.
That's cool stuff. And then before we close out, I wanted to.
And the language of birds is something we supposedly lost in the confusion of tongues,
Right.
isn't it? Right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, when it talks about Solomon gaining his wisdom, one of the things about that was that he gained the ability to speak to the animals.
Yeah.
And so he could.
He learned the language of birds.
Yeah.
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 Post Babel.
And that could be an analogy of, I think of things like mathematics or physics, because once you learn the language, then you begin to understand how nature does all of these things. And then you can, you can use that information to build your own stuff that does cool stuff, just as we do today. But in the process of looking through, going down the rabbit hole of the Shamir, I was talking earlier about how I was trying to find, similar ideas in other cultures. And I thought, well, China and Japan, they have a lot of megalithic structures. So what do their legends say about how the builders built? Did they do this stuff in one night? Did they sing the stones? And I couldn't really find anything, but I did find this one interesting thing that's kind of off topic, but it's great because this, to me, is the way I love to look at the myths. So there's the story of the moon goddess, Chang'o, the Chinese goddess of the moon, is the subject of several legends in Chinese mythology. The moon goddess myth revolves around Hao Yi, the archer, the elixir of life, a benevolent emperor, and the moon. So here we are, the elixir of life again. This popular and interesting story about Chang'o takes you to the distant past, where the 10 sons of the Jade Emperor were transformed into 10 suns, S-U-N-S. So 10 fiery things in the sky. The 10 suns rose to heaven and scorched the earth, threatening mankind's survival. The archer Yi shot down 9 of these suns and left only 1. Yi was then rewarded with the elixir of immortality. One day, when Yi was out hunting, his apprentice Fang Ming broke into his house and tried to get the elixir from Yi's wife, Chang Yi. But Chang Yi refused to give the elixir to Fang Ming and drank it all herself.
Ooh.
As she consumed it, she became weightless and flew upwards towards the heavens and stayed on the moon as a refugee.
Wait, they gave him this thing of immortality, and he was like stashed it in his house and didn't use it? Huh.
Well, I guess it was a bottle of liquid.
Yeah, but did he drink it? I mean, that's why I guess my question is.
I suppose he was like, once a day, he's like,
take a little sip.
Tiny little.
Okay. And she was like, no, you can't have it, and drank the whole
Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. Right. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Getting hung up on some irrelevant detail.
Because it's not irrelevant. Damn it.
I know. I'm just.
Oh,
it's
thanks
totally not the detail that I was focused on, but go ahead.
I've heard this in other stories where they're given something like that and they don't use it.
Gilgamesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got the plant.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to eat it yet. Let me go feed it.
I'm going to go test it on somebody.
He's going to go test it on all the old guys back in.
Yeah.
And so he lays it down and then goes to sleep. Like, what?
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. That is a good point. He leaves it at his house while he's out hunting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got the
and he has
immortality.
Yeah, and he has an apprentice who's not with him while he's hunting.
Right.
Okay. The point that I got from it was obvious. I mean, I'm thinking of
comets and
Younger Dryas, all of this stuff, and then there's a refugee on the moon.
Yeah.
After the destruction, the immortality was drank. Okay, so she consumes the thing that makes you immortal, and then is sitting there on the moon.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay,
Yeah, I got to go full Ancient Aliens. on that one.
we've got boxes. You know, that's okay. Yeah, okay. You want to stash stuff through an apocalypse? You might want to put them in giant stone boxes,
Yeah.
or to make things truly immortal,
You put them in space.
go to the moon.
Yeah.
and stash them there.
Yeah,
That's where your real boxes are.
that's right.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And yeah, there you go. The 10 suns in the sky. I mean,
Yeah.
wreaking havoc and burning the earth, and it's just.
And something shoots down 9 of them.
And then you have, once again, this connection to the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
When you look into all the different iterations of that story, you find out that the gods would not allow man the domain of the heavens.
Yeah.
And they lived in fear of the gods, and the gods would be flying around in the heavens and like, damn it, why can't we have the heavens too? And eventually one guy builds this spear and he throws it up there and actually hits one, and blood comes down.
Yeah.
And they realized they was
could
like,
be
oh
hurt.
man, they can be killed.
Yeah.
So let's build a tower to the heavens, because now we can subdue it.
Yes. And yeah, you're right. The moon is a perfect hermetic seal.
That's right.
It is contained in a vacuum.
Yeah. So maybe that's where the Thamir is.
Shamir.
Yep.
Where's my paper of stuff?
What happened to the dark side of the moon rover?
Oh, and I wanted to say thanks to Jeff for this awesome Epic of Gilgamesh book.
Man, I saw that the other day.
I got to go through this thing. It's like a comic book version of the Epic of Gilgamesh. This is going to be great.
Yep. I saw that sitting up there. When did that come?
I don't know. I think Laura got
she
the package.
she unpackaged it and put it up there for us.
and she put it there. Yeah, two Snake Bros from Curator.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yes. So, and I know you, buddy, you said that you sent us something else, and it must still be in the it must still be at the PO at the post office, because Laura hasn't gone. You know, she's been having babies. So yeah, I really appreciate that, man. I'm definitely gonna have to read this thing. It looks great. But yeah, it's the Epic of Gilgamesh as a comic book. Fantastic. On the front cover, you see Gilgamesh, and I guess is that must be Urshanabi?
Yeah, I think so.
Because they're on the
He's got
raft.
his big pole raft.
Yeah, they're on the pole raft. And Gilgamesh is holding up the monster's head. Is that
Humbaba, maybe?
Humbaba's head? It's freaking great. It's got flies around it.
Or I guess that could be Gilgamesh and Enkidu.
I guess it could be Enkidu.
Anyway, we got to read it. It looks
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know where my paper of ending stuff is. I lost it.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, here it is. Here it is. Right, so you guys can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. Check out the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. That's where all of our cool podcast-related stuff is. And I want to say the archive feed is now available. So for those, there's many ways you can get the archive of the back catalog of shows that no longer shows up in the current standard podcast feed. One way is on the website. Every show is there. You got to kind of go through the back catalog there. Or you can go to the archive page on the website, and there's a whole list of links, along with links to other things like spoof commercials and other fun stuff we've made. But at the top of the archive page now is a link to an RSS file, and you can just copy paste that into your podcasting app or your feed reader or whatever. And that will give you episodes. That will give you a feed of episodes 2 through 92. And I've got confirmation that this works. I've tested it. Kyle tested it out, and I put it in the Discord, and some people tested it out. I see it's got a bunch of subscribers already. So that feed will never change. It's just all the shows from episode 2 to 92, and then eventually I'll have to make another one that has episodes 93 to whatever, and so on and so forth. But I'll just keep putting the links there on the archive page. So that just makes it easier for people who normally listen to podcasts, with a podcast app. Well, now you can get the archive in your feed, in your app, and go through them that way with all the descriptions and the pictures we posted and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm glad I said this on the previous show that I was going to try to do this, and I managed to do it. Now I know how to do it, so I'll be able to do it in the future. So there should always be a feed with archive shows.
Good job.
Yep.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah. And it wasn't too much. I mean, it was kind of a pain in the ass, but now that I know how to do it, it's not too bad.
As little work as possible. And
That's right. Yeah.
so now that you got it figured out, it should be easy.
Yes, that's right.
Templates. That's what it's all about here,
Yeah,
folks.
that's right.
Build very elaborate templates.
And you can also find a link to the Discord on the website. So you just go to Discord chat Snake Pit, and you'll see there's a little widget there, and at the bottom of the widget, there's a button that says connect, and that'll take you straight to it.
Be nice in the chats.
Yep, be nice in the chats. Don't post any porn. Don't talk politics. Just talk pyramids.
Yeah.
And also, there's a little test.
You can talk politics if it's 4,000 years old.
That's
or
right.
older.
Yeah, very old politics is okay. But there's a little test which we did to keep out trolls. So when you first join, you'll be in the hatchery, and you'll get a notification that you got to answer 3 questions out of 7 or something like
5?
that. Yeah, 5 questions, 3 questions. Yeah, there's like 7 questions or something, and as long as you can answer 3 of them, which they're not too hard, it's just to make sure that people who join are actually people who listen to the show and are familiar with it. And, it's just kind of weeds people out because we had some problems for a little while there. Anyway, so yeah, join the chats. It's fun. That's run by Jeff, who sent us this book, Epic of Gilgamesh. And he also runs the Library of the Serpent. There's a link to that on the website as well. Thanks to History Shift, who makes all of our YouTube videos. He does a ton of work for us. Man, he's so great. Thanks to Pod Doodles, who takes some of our shows and turns. He's been doing the UFO series with Marty.
Thank you, buddy.
Got to check those out. It's really cool.
Awesome.
And yeah.
And thanks to William for your donation, buddy. He says, thank you for all the great material you guys put together on your podcast. I hope this helps in some small way to get you to the pyramids. Snakes!
Snakes!
And yes, it really does.
It does.
Absolutely, and we're going to do it. So thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who donates to the show. We really appreciate it.
That's right.
We're gonna do it anyway, even if you don't. But it's really awesome that you guys do donate, and we are going to use that money to go on some really awesome trips.
That's right.
And learn more about all of this stuff which we love. And come back and tell all about it to you.
That's right. And also, I want to say thanks again to Ben from Uncharted X.
Yes.
We should be starting up the Swapcast series again with him this coming week. And this whole thing has been great, and he's awesome. So check out his channel for sure. And yeah, see you guys next week.
And there was one other donation, and he says, Snakes! And his name is Bro. So thank you, Bro.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think he wrote us an email. We read it last time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and he said, yes, you pronounced my name right, Bro.
That's a freaking awesome name.
That's right.
Just,
What's
yeah.
up, bro?
Yep.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys.
Snake, bro.
We really love you.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work!